Hello everyone, I'm Horace, part of the marriage ministry at the Hampton Roads Church, and I'm here to share about our power in God's plan. Now I grew up with the general understanding that God knows everything. He knows what happened in the past, He knows what's going on right now, and He also knows what's going to happen in the future. And as I grew a little older and got a little nerdier, like now, I can kind of think past that and say, okay, if He already knows these things, then it's already set in place. And so all I need to do is sit back and watch the ride. And I think through, well, what about prayer? I've seen situations and heard like, okay, a prayer has been answered, and then I rationalize thinking, well, maybe that prayer was just in line with what was already going to happen. And if you're like me, your mind can confuse your mind. What led me even closer to this was in Psalm 33:6. It talks about how God breathed the stars. And I could think to myself, if even in hyperbole, if you have that amount of power to where you could form a star by speaking it into existence, does my prayer, does anything I say, have the ability, have the power to change a plan put forth by a God like that? And one thing that I did notice as I kind of went down this path is it gives me comfort in knowing like, well, God is that powerful. Whatever situation is happening, He's got it, He's in control. But on the other end, it removed any power that He set aside for me and set aside for anyone else, and just gives all the power to Him. And I'll show you what I mean about that. Because although that sounds comforting, God's in control, He's all powerful, He knows what's going on, and He's going to handle it. The portion where we get involved isn't that accurate, just saying that we're sitting down, watching it all play out. Just because God knows what's going to happen, it does not mean that it's already predestined. Or just because He knows what's going to happen, it doesn't mean that no matter what we do or what we try to do, we're all just kind of set in line robotically to carry out this plan. God did not place us here to sit on the sideline. A great example to show us this removal from the sideline, and more so an example that shows just because God knows it's going to happen does not mean that situation has to play out. We can look at 1 Samuel 23, and from verses 1 through 13, we see a conversation that David's having with God about going to save a town called Keilah. And so for time's sake, we'll skip down to verse 7, but basically what happens is he's having this conversation with God. His men are a little afraid of going down fighting the Philistine army. But God says, hey, I'm going to give them over to you guys. Go and do it. And so they do. In verse 7, Saul was told that David had gone to Keilah. He said, God has handed him over to me. David has trapped himself by entering a town that has gates and metal bars. So Saul brought together all his soldiers to go to battle. He ordered them to go down to Keilah. He told them to surround David and his men, and he told them to get ready to attack. David learned that Saul was planning to attack him, so he said to Abiathar the priest, bring the linen apron. And then David said, and this is the important part right here, Lord, you are God of Israel. And so his conversation that he's having with God. I know for sure that Saul plans to come to Keilah. He plans to destroy the town because of me. Will the citizens of Keilah hand me over to him? And will Saul come down here? And so here we see that David he's talking to God as he's been this whole time. And he's asking him a future question. Is this what is going to happen? Of course, David doesn't know, but he knows that God has this power. And the Lord said, he will come down. So God tells him, yes, he is going to do that. And so again, David asks, kind of just to make sure, okay, will the citizens of Keilah hand me and my men over to Saul? And the Lord said, they will. And so here David is faced with a reality of a future situation that God has given him. And God is saying, if in this situation you stay here, this is what's going to happen. Saul will come, and the people in this town are going to hand you over to him. Now, David could have sat there and said, well, God knows what's happening in the future. It's already set out in place. I guess we'll see what happens. Or more so, I guess we'll experience what happens. But let's see what David does. The very next thing it says is, so David and his men left Keilah. The total number of them was about 600. They kept moving from place to place. Saul was told that David had escaped from Keilah, so he didn't go there. And so we see a situation where David talking to God, who's all-knowing, who's all-powerful, and he even gets the pleasure of asking a question about, hey, what's going to happen in the future? God gives him the answer. That's not a good one. Saul's coming, and yes, the people in this town are going to hand you guys over to Saul. But just because God knew exactly what would happen in that situation did not mean that that situation had to play out. David gathered his men, about 600 of them, and they left. And once Saul found that out, Saul did not go to Keilah, and of course, the people of Keilah did not hand them over to Saul. And so reading this passage, it kind of blew my mind because I saw a situation where God showed his foreknowledge, but the plan that God said did not happen. And so it gave me a little excitement, like, okay, just because God knows exactly what's going to happen, we're bound by time, God is not, does not mean in that circumstance that we have to play out whatever is going on currently. In James 5:16 and 17, it says, the prayer of the righteous is powerful. And then it gives an example that Elijah, who was a human being just like you and I, he prayed for the rain to stop. God actually listened to him. And then when he prayed for the rain to begin, he listened again. And so it shows us that, okay, although God knows everything, he gives us a piece in his plan. He doesn't just set us here and say, hey, I know what's going to happen and I want you to watch. But he actually gives us, we're valuable players in the game of life. And so we know God's ultimate plan. 1 Timothy 2:4, God desires that we're all saved and come to know the truth. But the good news is, in order for that plan to play out, he depends on each and every one of us. This gives me excitement and confidence knowing that I can join together in prayer and in action to change the situations that come our way. After David spoke to God, he saved around 600 men. He conversed with God, and he was able to change their current situation. He spoke with God and he took action. He wasn't paralyzed when God told him what would happen if the current situation stayed the same, but he made a decision to change it. During a pandemic like this, I can feel that my little prayers, my little voice won't make a change. It won't make any noise. It won't change anything. But it's encouraging to know that the same God that listened to David, the same God that listened to Elijah, is the same God that listens to you and I. The decisions that we make and the prayers that we make are just as powerful as theirs was. And so we can have the heart, we can pray for the spiritual, the mental, and the physical well-being of ourselves and those around us. And we can have confidence, great confidence, that God is not only listening to us, but these things have the power to play out. And so let's have that love and compassion that checks up on one another, not just during this time, but every time. And let's also be a community that prays consistently for the mental, physical, and spiritual health of ourselves and others, knowing that our prayers are powerful and our decisions that we make moment by moment can change the trajectory of our lives. They can change what even David saw as a very grim future to a bright future. And so what decisions will you make? What prayers will you pray? Again, your prayers and your actions can change the trajectory of the future of not just yourself, but others. So pray powerful prayers and make those daily decisions that will not just change your life, but change others as well. Stay strong.